So we basically want to talk to you about your perceptions of RE Plus this year and just see where the conversation goes.
So I told you guys before it started, this was the most excited I've ever been about RE Plus. And I tried to figure out why that was, right? You would have thought, well, in 2022, the IRA had just passed, and that was super exciting. Last year, we had so many more people than we could have even imagined. That was exciting. But I think this year, I think maybe it was a combination of like the 50th anniversary gala that we had, where we kind of came together and celebrated this industry and the growth of all that we've built together, plus the continued growth. Like, I was pretty anxious about whether last year's heightened interest in our show was some sort of blip.
Yeah.
Clearly it's not. Plus sort of this this optimism I feel about the health of our industry, regardless of what happens in politics. And as someone who lives in politics, that's a very freeing thing to say. And so I just was incredibly excited, and that has been, my excitement has been met with my experience here. It's been really fun.
That's great. We've heard the word smooth over and over and over again to describe the experience of not just exhibitors, but conference goers, board members, staff, and that's what we want to hear, right?
Yeah, that is absolutely what I want to hear. I also think, I've been, you, Colin, have been hearing me preach about this for 8 years now, and Steph, you for a year, but, as our industry grows larger, we need to act like it. And this feels like a mature trade show. We're not running around with our hair on fire. We have a podcast. That's what mature industries do, right? We had a number of high-level officials from the government, right? We had a huge international presence. Like, there's just a number of things you could tick off to say, oh, yes, you are, in fact, operating like a mature industry.
Yeah. I mean, we're the largest energy trade show in North America at this point, right?
Yeah.
Where are we going to be in 10 years from now?
Oh, my gosh. Where are we going to be?
Taking over the world.
Yes, let's do it.
We're going to be number one.
Yes. Well, I went to the international reception last night. I've never been before. And it was amazing. It was like, 6 p.m. on Wednesday night in the North Hall in the back corner. It took me 20 minutes to get there, but I was well marked. I knew exactly where I was going.
Great.
And there were just so many people back there, right? Talking about, and they were from all different countries. Like, at one point we had the head of the trade association from the U.S., me, Mexico, and then like the vice president from Canada. And so we took this photo, like, all right, we got North America covered. Great. What else? What else we got?
I love it.
That's awesome.
That's ideal.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
It was really cool.
Such a spirit of like everyone wanting to be here and work together towards something. Like, we heard the word partnership over and over again. We heard the word, collaboration and community so much. Like, there's a lot of like, we're all in this together vibes this year, which is really cool to see.
It is really cool to see. Have you heard a lot about sort of technological innovation in this podcast room?
Totally. Yeah, we were talking to Anne at Generac about all the things that they're rolling out for customers. We were talking to Array about the things like the solutions that they're providing to EPCs to make their work more efficient. That's what I think is for me at least, someone who doesn't get super steeped in the technology on a day-to-day basis. Like, one of my favorite things about this event is like reminding myself that people are like actually innovating every day, creating new projects and products for people. It's really cool.
Yeah. Even racking technology. I mean, we can get wonky with it, but it's been fun to see.
It's hard to make, solar trackers sexy, but people do it.
Oh,
I see what you did there. Oh, I love it. No, it's been so fun to have the sheep, and we're seeing how to clean solar panels and photovoltaic. How do you say it?
Yeah, I heard that word.
Photovoltaics.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Photovoltaics.
That is a mouthful, but I like it.
Yeah, there's like a little floating thing in the lower exhibit hall.
I'll have to go check it out.
That's cool.
I had a meeting this morning, and there's now, just this morning, one of our companies put a new video up because they got the final okay from legal last night.
Oh, wow.
But it's a new robot to put solar panels in, like, to install them out in utility scale projects. Like, I love hearing that, because I agree with you, Colin. Like, I live in the world of policy and politics, and so having a space to learn about all these different technologies is pretty cool.
Yeah, the energy here has been amazing this year. Just the sheer volume of people flooding the streets and the trade show floors and taking their cameras with them. The storytelling element of this trade show is huge this year.
Yes.
I feel like. So we're in Thursday. We're shutting it down in 35 minutes. And I think the news is good. The trajectory is good for next year.
Well, and we've just captured so much
Yeah.
content and stories that like this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes. There's some good energy
There's
here.
some good energy happening.
Do you guys have a theme song?
Alyssa, welcome to Good Energy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. We've been kicking these conversations off by having our guests tell us who they are, tell us about your company,
Sure.
and what you're doing at RE+.
Sure. So I'm Alyssa Edwards. I work at Lightsource BP. We're a utility scale solar company. At Lightsource, I'm Senior Vice President of Environmental Affairs and Government Relations. So I manage land management and ecosystem services like agrivoltaics. I do all state and federal government relations. I do community relations as well, and I do environmental permitting and compliance. Lightsource BP is a 50-50 JV with BP, the oil and gas super major. We've been in the U.S. since about 2018, and we have around 2.5 gigawatts of operating projects and a big pipeline of development projects.
That's amazing. What's
Yeah.
the biggest opportunity for you here business-wise at RE+?
So actually, I just finished doing a panel with Ted Lee. He's the Assistant Deputy Secretary of Tax something at Treasury. And we were talking about adder credits and things like that. So, I was talking about sort of the corporate experience and how we're utilizing, domestic content and energy communities and how important that is. And just sharing some of the experiences, that how we're monetizing those credits and the tools that we're using at Lightsource. And I thought it was so interesting to I offered my perspective, but afterwards I was, engaging with people and hearing how other companies were doing that. So I think first and foremost, sort of networking with people and sort of understanding how other companies are realizing the benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act. And so I think that's kind of, my main reason for, coming here, and it's what I look forward to the most.
Well, I have to ask you about agrivoltaics because
Oh my God.
you
Okay,
mentioned
good.
it in your opening, and it's one of my favorite words. I feel like it's every year there's a new topic that feels like the thing everyone wants to talk about, and agrivoltaics is certainly one of those this year. What is that what does it mean to you? It's gone far beyond a buzzword, and it's a lot of different things within that sort of one nomenclature, but how does that factor into Lightsource's business model?
Yeah, so I'll summarize it this way. 4.5 years ago, when I joined Lightsource, my boss at the time said, hey, why don't you try to do agrivoltaics? And I didn't really understand what that... I could have never possibly imagined how complicated it would be and how much benefit it would bring to our projects and to communities and to rural farmers. So, for us, it's been an absolute journey. And I can tell you right now, our primary focus for agrivoltaics is sheep grazing. So essentially having the sheep mow the lawn, I always say.
Yeah.
They're efficient. They can get into tight spaces. They can deal with weeds. And we partner with rural community members, rural farmers, and we pay them, right? And so it's a great way to uplift rural communities. Right now, we have over 2 gigawatts, if you can believe this.
Wow.
Oh, well, I'll say this, 90% of our operating projects have agrivoltaics. It went from something we trialed on 1 or 2 projects, and now we've sort of figured out how to make it work. We've figured out, what we need to do to projects in the construction phase, fencing, water sources, how to find reliable farming partners. That all takes time, and I just have to give the biggest shout out to Lexi Hain. She's our director of agrivoltaics, and she made it all happen. She's a solar grazer herself in upstate New York, and she runs the entire program at Lightsource BP. And without her, we couldn't have done it. But it takes creativity, and you have to fail a few times at things, and then you figure out how to do it. We also have honey production, beekeeping. We're looking at, cattle. I think is going to be the next thing. Trickier because they're just, obviously
bigger animals,
different species that like sheep aren't interested in like wires and stuff. But clearly where we're developing projects, you can see the need to integrate cattle.
Can I ask you before you move on from this topic, to make it very simple for our audience? Let's say I'm a farmer. Let's say I'm interested. I've heard agrivoltaics, and I'm not really know what that means, right? But I'm a family farmer, and I want to change the way that energy is being sourced on my property, or I want to reduce my costs in some way. Like, what do I do? How do I engage with Lightsource? How does that process work?
Yeah. So first of all, I'll just put a quick plug in. You won't believe this, but there's this organization called ASGA, American Solar Grazing Association, that Lexi Hain founded, but is still on the board, but works with us. That is an incredible resource for farmers. Everything from like legal advice. How do you do your contracts? What does rotational grazing look like? What your how many head of sheep you need per acre, like all these things, right?
Yeah.
And it's such an incredible resource. So for anybody who's interested, you can go to ASGA, or you can just reach out to us directly at Lightsource BP on our website. We have a general inquiries. It's pretty easy to find, and you can just submit your email and reach out to us. We are always looking for grazing partners in the communities where we work, and we have. The partners we have right now, I think we have like 16 or 17 grazing families right now that we're working with, and some do like multiple sites.
Yeah.
We should know this, but did you bring the sheep to RE Plus?
Yeah, so there are sheep here, believe it or not, and they're located somewhere in this place.
They're over there.
I've seen photos.
Have
I haven't
you
seen
seen
them
them?
in person yet, but
yeah. So ASGA is here, and they
so
have
cool.
brought sheep, and you can get a selfie if you want.
yeah.
So
I intend to for sure. So you've mentioned the word community many times now as we've been talking. You know as well as anybody that getting community engagement and acceptance early on in a project's life is super, super important. And
it is.
We've been facing a lot of sort of, pushback and opposition from, sort of outside sources and genuine grassroots support or lack thereof. What does that look like at Lightsource? How has that changed maybe over the last few years and evolved as you've been trying to build support in local communities for this work?
Yeah. So that is, well, first of all, I think we all know, and there's a lot of data to support it, that right now community opposition is probably the number one challenge that we have as developers in the developer community. I think, as an industry, I've been in this industry for like almost 20 years. Like, we sort of thought we could like rest on our laurels, like, okay, we're clean energy and we'll be accepted into communities, and it hasn't worked out that way. And so, at Lightsource BP, we have absolutely been on this journey and evolving as well. Our community relations team works throughout the entire project lifecycle, so from greenfield all the way into operations, and we are learning along the way. It's so important there's a lot of things that are important, but get in early with communities and make relationships, but also understand that there's so much negative rhetoric right now, and there are a lot of forces working against utility scale solar. We all know this, right? I mean, the grassroots thing is real. And I guess, I know we don't have a lot of time, but I can say the most important thing is to bring stakeholders to the project site, right? Show them how beautiful a solar site can look. Show them that it is not so loud.
Yeah.
It's not going to be this like eyesore on the landscape. I mean, we do farm fencing wherever we can. We put in pollinators. We have sheep grazing. I mean, we're trying to, agricultural integration is huge, and we're trying our very best to do that. And we have a team that is working with stakeholders and communities, from project inception all the way into operations. And I would say, some things that we're working on is, handover from development to construction and operation. That's so important. I mean, I've worked in a bunch of companies that is key. How the relationships you have with the landowners, how will that translate through the project life cycle? I mean, those are really big things. So we work really, really hard on that. And I would just say the last thing about this, we all know this, you can't expect to go into communities and give them money and they're going to like you. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
You have to show tangible, real benefits to community members who are not participating landowners, right? And clean renewable energy might not be the sell.
Yeah.
Right. That's super smart. Colin and I have been thinking a lot about this in our roles at SEIA and partnering with an organization called TigerCom to help train a lot of our partners, a lot of our members at SEIA to think about what that should look like. So we really appreciate your leadership in that space because we've got a long way to go to do that well.
I would also say what's so critical is that developers are, and you guys are great leaders and can bring people together. We have to learn from each other.
Right.
Nobody knows how to do this perfectly. Right. Nobody, not nobody. And we're on this journey and we're talking about the build out and meeting our climate goals, and we just can't do it unless we get this right. And one of the things that I'm really seeking is learning from other developers. I'm so willing to share what it's been like for us in different communities, and maybe we can, come together because high tides floats all boats, but also whatever the opposite of that is.
Right, low tide single boats.
Yeah. So,
that's true. And that collective sharing is, I would put aside our competitive differences a little bit and actually sort of open up about how, places that we're doing well and places that maybe we aren't. So.
Yes. And I'm willing to bet that most people in this industry are willing to come together and figure this out.
It's exciting.
Is there anything else you want to make sure that you hit our audience with in before we let you go?
Well, no, just that, it's just unbelievable to see how many people are here. It's such a testament to the work that you're doing at SEIA. So thank you both so much. The energy transition is real and we're all here for it. Yeah. So, I consider it an honor to be here and working in the industry. So
we couldn't do without you. So.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us.
So tell us about sort of your entry point to RE Plus and to SEIA and to the solar industry in particular. What brought you here and why are you interested in this work?
Oh yeah, man, SEIA, I almost feel like it speaks for itself. But what brought us into this energy work, and particularly renewable energy work, is that for the last 2+ years, Dream.org has specifically worked on the Inflation Reduction Act, more specifically the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, right? Including the Justice 40 principle. So in terms of how are we making sure that at least 40% of federal climate funds go to the communities who have been most impacted by pollution. Historically marginalized communities. And that, for the history of Dream, has been what the organization is focused on. How are we uplifting some of the most marginalized communities? And obviously, when you think about green economy, you think about what this future looks like, and you think about climate activism, you can't speak about that without talking about how are we transitioning out of fossil fuels, out of petrochemicals, and what are we transitioning to? And how are we making sure that the communities that have been most impacted by that aren't left behind? And I mean, I feel like you can't exist in renewable energies without hearing the name SEIA. And so
love to hear that.
That's great.
And so last year was actually my first year attending the conference in Vegas, and I did it on my own. And after that, I said, no way. Ain't no way I'm doing this by myself.
You need a team.
Yeah, you need a team. And so I think we have 11 team members later and a membership to SEIA later. We are here.
Awesome.
We are on the ground, and we're having conversations because this is the biggest conference in North America, right? This is an opportunity just to get in front of a lot of people and have conversations and make sure that as people get excited about, particularly I'm a finance person, right? So I am super excited about the influx, particularly of public dollars, to help boost up and deploy both new technologies, but also elevate existing technologies to help us with this transition, and then get into the nitty gritty of some of the intricacies of how do we get it all together. Yesterday I was on a panel for SEIA around grid equity. But I also want to make sure that equity, as we go speed and as we continue to fundraise dollars, that we do not lose a focus on equity and making sure that the most vulnerable communities aren't left behind.
So important. Really appreciate your engagement and bringing your whole crew out
Yeah,
here.
yeah, oh
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, and they've enjoyed it. And plus, it's just it's a very cool space to learn, right? Like one of the things that I consider myself a lifetime learner, and I love to learn. But what I also love is that my team is very reflective of the communities that we say we want to represent, and so we have the ability to be almost cultural stewards in terms of taking all this information that we digest here and bringing it back to our communities, so that when we're in them and when they hear, developers come and they hear about new projects, it is not something that is the first time they're hearing it. They're hearing it from trusted community members.
I'm hoping you can break down for our audience a little bit more how you would like to see other organizations engage with you to create those bridges, eventual partnerships. What would you like that to look like? What would you like to see?
So we are always open and willing to work with like developers, utility companies, anybody who is thinking seriously about like equity, right? And how they are bringing and working with in partnership. Because I never say for, right? I always say in partnership with historically marginalized communities, particularly BIPOC communities, particularly if you're doing workforce development and you're interested in partnering with like justice impacted folks and what are some of the best practices around that. If you are, my team does a lot of financial modeling. So if you're interested in like, I am a developer, I'm interested in doing a lot more solar financing and figuring out like what works and speaks to and with communities of color, historically marginalized communities. Those are conversations that we're always willing to engage with and partner with organizations around. If it is something as simple as like, I need to go into community X and hold a conversation, but I am terrified because I have a horrible history with that community.
Right.
Which a lot of folks
Yeah,
do.
totally.
And that's honest, right? But like, and you can have come from a place where you might not have had the best relationship. But I mean, if you've ever been like in a marriage, there are some days you hate your partner. right? But like, if you want to stick it out, right, you have to be willing to have very difficult conversations. And what we consider of ourselves is that as an organization can help you have those difficult conversations with the community so you can work through your issues and concerns. You can come out with a killer community of benefits agreement that works for both your organization, your company, but also for communities, and that both feel like they're in a win-win.
That's great. Is the product for some companies that community benefits agreement? Is it partnering with them on their sustainability goals? Like, could you pinpoint any more specificity around the ways that companies should envision walking the talk a little bit more?
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of it is coming with like a sense of like humility. I know that we get super excited and super pumped about all like these new like technologies, right? And like we're rapid fire, like love, and I'm doing my dissertation work around like microgrids and like and artificial intelligence, right? So I love the geek out too, but sometimes that's not what communities are ready to hear just yet.
Right.
And that doesn't mean you can't do that work in communities, but it means there has to be a little bit more work that has to be done to get to a place. And a lot of times when folks think about, oh, I got to do that work, I got to engage with like these communities, right? They don't think about if you actually do the precursor work, it avoids like the lawsuits, right? It avoids like the community protests. It avoids the animosity if like that upfront work is done in terms of let's have like some community meetings, right? Let's figure out like if community have their own community vision, which a lot of communities do, right? Before I come to that community, make sure I completely understand that. Let's understand that community's history, right? Because people aren't the way they are by accident. It is the circumstance of the history of like their lived experience. And what we are exceptional about and with is because that is, for most of us, that is also our lived experience, right? So it is not something foreign to us, right? It's not just this academic endeavor. It is something that we live and breathe every day. And so we are at Dream are just exceptional about helping folks from the quote unquote like outside kind of come in and do the trust building exercise that are necessary to really see something. And so to answer some of your questions, does it involve like understanding like sustainability goals? Does it involve understanding what a community needs, right, in order to support? Like I always have conversations with folks who are doing a lot of solar on roofs, which is really really cool and really cool, right? Like I wouldn't be here if I didn't think it was. But sometimes it involves other conversations, right? In terms of like, well, who because there's been a lot of stuff even in solar in terms of exploitation, particularly like in Black and brown communities. So it's like, let's have conversations about that, right? And like what is being done differently so communities have a thorough understanding of that. If it's something as simple as we want to put solar on people's houses, making sure the houses are strong enough, right? And how are we connecting folks to programs that they understand, right? Or even having cultural understandings of what communities' relationships with debt are. When you're asking
Right.
somebody to do some sort of financing that will cause them to go into some sort of debt,
Right.
when they have a house that they've bought in 1950 that is
Right.
paid off, that's a different conversation, right? It's to somebody, you know, who like me lived for 18 years in like the Bay Area and knows that like my $1.2 million condo won't be paid off anytime soon.
Yeah.
Right? So asking me to do another 30,000 isn't that much, but like for other people it is, right? And being able to understand those different nuances and being able to have the right folks in the room to have those conversations. And despite how brilliant a lot of us may be in this space, sometimes we aren't the folks to have that conversation with those folks.
Yeah.
And we need to figure out who those right community gatekeepers are.
Yeah.
And Dream is phenomenal at doing all that.
Tell us about Standard Solar.
Yeah, so Standard, it's our 20th anniversary this year. We're
Oh,
very
nice.
excited. We're all wearing our pins.
Excellent.
So Standard is a company who works in the DG space. So we are acquiring assets, developing assets, and owning them long term. So I would say projects about 1 megawatt and above. I think the biggest in our portfolio is about 28 megawatts. Heavy into the community solar space, but also tons of behind the meter, direct offtake, VPPAs as well. We are owned by Brookfield, which has been a really fantastic transition for us. They acquired us in 2023, I believe, and that's been a really great partnership. Honestly, we feel very thankful. We're well capitalized, which allows us to actually do what we say we're going to do. So it's been a great transition.
That's
So,
awesome.
you know, the space that Standard occupies, I feel like often gets described as one of the tougher markets, right? That sort of middle range, like large scale DG and all the, you know, the project types are all really unique and the customers are really unique. And so from your vantage point in origination and biz dev, you know, what are the challenges that you're seeing? How are you sort of responding to the difficulties in sort of matching, you know, project requirements with the customers that you're looking for?
Yeah, well, I will say that I think that what makes it hard is also what makes it really interesting to work in.
Yeah.
So none of our deals are cookie cutter, right? We're seeing very different offtake profiles, project profiles, policy profiles, all of that. So every deal we're seeing, it can be a challenge because you're not reinventing the wheel, but you're finding new things that come up, right? So you're always on your toes. What's great about that, I think, Standard is quite flexible. So we're very motivated to ensure that we're growing. And so we have to be flexible and we have to be willing to look at things creatively. What's a creative solution here? So I think that the space can be challenging because we are, unlike residential or utility scale, seeing so much variation on a deal-to-deal basis. But that's also what makes it exciting. And it attracts a lot of people who are very interested in that quick growth and change and learning experiences. So we attract a lot of people who are very interested in that kind of fast-paced deal development.
Yeah, it's never a dull moment, I would
Exactly.
imagine. And in terms of community solar in particular, you know, there's obviously a lot of different states that are sort of surging on community solar, and then others that are sort of not so much. Where are you all sort of focused geographically, and what kind of trends are you seeing in the community solar space these days?
Yeah, so community solar, huge portion of our portfolio. We have a lot in the Mid-Atlantic. That's where we're based. So, and also where there's a lot of incentives.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunity there. What's really hot right now is Illinois. So Illinois, we're doing a ton of development. We're seeing, it's a very rich market. We have adjustable block program. We have smart inverter rebate. So there's a lot of money to be made there and a lot of capacity. ComEd has a ton of people in it. So we are seeing Illinois boom. I feel like that's been a topic that has been discussed at almost all of my meetings here this week. Everyone's interested in Illinois. Everyone's acquiring in Illinois or selling in Illinois. So that's a big one that's very hot for us. We have, I think, projects in about 25 states. And it's interesting to see that ebb and flow over time as you talk about, you know, maybe 4 years ago, we were very hot in New York, right? And now there's a big portion of our portfolios in New York. What's next, right? And then we're talking about Massachusetts. There's a really great smart rebate there, or smart program, excuse me. Makes that a very lucrative program to be a part of. And really, it's over the last year and a half, we've seen Illinois just become the place to be.
Boom.
Yeah.
That's
Cool.
great. I wonder if we could pull ourselves out of the weeds just a little bit for our more general audience that we're working on creating here. And have you paint a picture of what community solar looks like in real life?
Yeah, community solar is really an opportunity for the community, residents, maybe small businesses, to participate in clean energy without having to put up capital and buy a system, put it on their roof or on their parking lot. So there are different states that incentivize or create policies that allow for companies like Standard Solar to develop and own an asset that creates power. And then we can subscribe these different, whether it's low income, residential clients, small companies, as I mentioned, and they can all participate. They can benefit from that clean energy being generated without spending a ton of money. So it's really allowing for solar and renewables to become accessible to markets that it wasn't necessarily open to prior.
Right. I appreciate that so much. What do you think the impact of community solar can have for communities that might have been underrepresented in some ways over the next 15 to 20 years?
Yeah, that's been really a huge push, I would say, in the IRA as well. There's a lot of policies specifically focusing on incentivizing these low-income communities to be able to subscribe to solar projects. I think that brings in development, it brings in jobs, brings in opportunity for those communities, and really it can use a lot of land that was maybe a brownfield or a landfill, something that was not a productive part of that community, and turns that into something that everyone can benefit from. So I think it's bringing in a lot of economic benefit to those community and awareness as well, right? About these communities. They can be very underrepresented, and how can we prioritize bringing them into the fold?
Let's talk about RE Plus briefly. What has it been like this year? Is it your first year? Is it like what's your story with RE Plus?
So RE Plus, I started coming in 2014.
Okay, great.
So it looked like a very different show at that point, much smaller.
Yeah.
So I would say, over time, it's just grown like gangbusters. What are we, 40, 50,000 this week? Yeah. And that's huge.
Yeah.
So you're not even able to walk the whole floor and meet all the people you're looking to meet. So over time, I think this is a very productive conference. This is our biggest show. We probably have about 15 people here.
Awesome.
For the show, and there's people on our team that are engineering and contractors, and they're having a completely different experience than someone like myself focused on the development side. So there's so much opportunity here. The conference has just really grown, and I love that. It's a reflection of the industry, right?
So
it's
cool.
a reflection of just how great this industry can be to attract new and young talent, people who are really motivated.
What's the Standard Solar story here this year with your 20th anniversary alongside RE Plus's 20th anniversary? What's like your team's message to people this week?
I would say we're hungry. We're growing and we're hungry. We continue to be very interested and want to acquire megawatts. We're gobbling up megawatts, I would say.
I love it.
So we're really trying to partner with a lot of people who's selling, right?
Yeah.
What's out there? Where can we deploy our capital and bring some of those assets in? So that's really our story. And our story also, very few companies in this industry have been around for 20 years. So we have the experience to give people a lot of assurity when you talk about ability to transact. And I think people really value that. It's not just that we're well capitalized, but it's that we really know what we're doing. We're pretty vertically integrated and we have that experience. And this is people call it the solar coaster, right? Our industry. And so you are always learning from past experiences, and we have a lot of experience to bring to the table.
You've been riding the coaster for a while. You know the ups and the downs.
Absolutely.
You know when the curves are coming. That's cool.
Where should people go if they wanna engage with Standard Solar?
So we have I would say, a great website that you can go to. Our marketing team is fantastic, and that has allowed us to actually generate a lot of leads from Standard. We're able to both help off-takers. So if you're just someone who's interested in, hey, I want clean power, how can I get that? If you're a developer looking to sell a project that's producing clean power, where can I sell that? So, our website, we have great contacts there. And everyone's very motivated to respond quickly. And so we're a very engaged group.
That's
Hungry.
awesome.
Yes. Gobbling.
Gobbling
What did I
up
say?
those megawatts.
Gobbling them up.
Anything else? What else do you want our audience to know? Anything that we haven't touched on?
What's always interesting is to just welcome people to this industry.
Yeah.
I love how much this industry has grown. I really do think it attracts talent. It attracts people who are passionate, and it's an exciting industry to be a part of. So, come on down.
Yeah.
Be part of. There's a lot of different opportunities, whether you're engineering, finance. There's a ton of different opportunities to get involved in this industry, and we're open to all.
Great.
Thanks for joining us, Megan. We really appreciate it, and hope you enjoy the rest of your RE Plus.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, my name is Nia Jones. I am the Environment and Climate Director at the African American Alliance of CDFI CEOs. And just to break it down,
It's a mouthful.
yes, we call it the Alliance just to make it short.
Yeah.
But the CDFI stands for Community Development Financial Institution.
And what do you do there?
Yes, so as the Environment and Climate Director, I have the humble pleasure to work alongside 100 Black CEOs of CDFIs. We're located across the entire country and Washington, D.C., and I help build their capacity to not only understand green energy, sustainable development, and what is even CO2. A lot of them are really accustomed to doing small business loans and more commercial real estate loans that have nothing to do with sustainability. So what I do is help bridge the gap between the movement of a just transition and their ability to actually be involved as green lenders.
It's awesome.
Yes. Fun work. I've only been in the role for about 4 months.
Oh, wow.
But it is a dream come true, and I really love my team, and I get to work alongside some really brilliant people in the finance industry.
That's great. What brought you to this work? What were you doing before?
Good question. So I'm an engineer is
Okay.
my background. I studied industrial engineering for my bachelor's, and I got a minor in law and policy. I started working for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission at a very young age as an intern, and I went all the way to work for the EPA for a little bit. I've worked for Eversource Energy on the offshore wind contracts team. So I'm really on the tech side. And prior to joining the Alliance, I was working at the University of California, Berkeley, where I got my master's to be in the inaugural role as the Director of Community Engagement for the Department of Civil Engineering. So I was working a lot with the youth, and I was making community plans and diversity plans come true from the private sector side. So for example, a geotechnical firm says, hey, I want to do outreach to local communities. As a liaison working for the university, I would help connect them to students in high schools or college students that come from diverse backgrounds to help make their dreams come true.
I wanted you to help sort of paint a picture for what kind of impact the work that your organization can have.
Yeah, so we are working really closely with the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So when I think of impact, I think of greenhouse gas emissions being reduced. And that looks like implementing green energy technology in the community. It looks like doing research and development of technologies that are going to be innovative in these communities. I know carbon capture is a somewhat touchy topic, but there is a need for technologies that communities are able to understand and it be relevant to their day-to-day life. And so an example of that, an impact, could be someone that's living in an affordable housing community that really needs some major repairs to either their utility system or maybe their roofing system. And so impact now can look like them getting financing loans to be able to either do the solar a roof repair so they can have solar on their roofs, or even just more like pipes that haven't been replaced in 20 years. A lot of this funding is going to go towards making sure that they have basic needs being met. And so that's the impact that our alliance is hoping to make across the board, across the country.
I love that. So I'm all about making the content from this podcast relatable and
Yes.
easy to understand. CDFIs is a term I'm very familiar with because of my career path. But could you explain what a CDFI is and the kind of role that a nonprofit financial institution can have for the
Yeah.
work that we're trying to talk about here?
Absolutely. So I like to say that CDFIs are non-depository institutions, meaning that you or I can have personal accounts there. So we wouldn't keep our checking or our savings in a CDFI. If you have a business, however, you can have a business account at a CDFI and get loans from them, manage your financing of your business from them. If you're a commercial development organization, you can also have an account there. So that's the simple terms. It's a non-depository institution.
Right. And one there that offers products that look a little bit more like, that are a little bit more accessible, longer term, lower interest terms on those loans. So when you're trying to drive impact and move the needle in a local community, it's just a really smart way to think about financing if you want to get your foot in the door, right?
Yep, absolutely. A word that I heard in doing my research is patient loans. Like you're being patient about it. You're not rushing them. You're letting them get their bearings so they can have the ability to pay back. And the default rate, I think, is pretty low in a lot of our cases. It is in like the single percentages because of the fact that those interest rates and those loan terms work for the person that is getting the loan. Yeah.
For some of those partnerships, are there, at least in my experience, oftentimes a combination between, a loan through your CDFI plus grants and other funding streams to make your spreadsheet where it needs to be in order to get the work done that you need to get done, right?
Absolutely. From the CDFI side, several of our members are also nonprofits, so they do take in funding and grant opportunities from different foundations, different grant opportunities that they can apply for, but also from the business side. A business shouldn't rely solely on their CDFI to do
Right.
all of 100% of their financing. It actually wouldn't be smart to do so. I think business-minded folks understand you have to continue to think long term when you're planning your business and making sure that balance sheet is balancing out correctly. And so it is going to take a compilation of both private and public funds. And that also goes back to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. The Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is a public program, but it cannot be executed properly without that private capital complementing it.
Right. So it obviously your role within the alliance is focused on climate and green energy, but I imagine there's a whole bunch of other ways that these institutions invest in their local communities. What has that sort of growth been like in terms of there being a dedicated role for someone like you? I imagine that's in and of itself an indication of sort of the increased interest in these kinds of investments. Is it a learning curve amongst these CEOs to explore these kinds of investments? What has that been like over your sort of last 4 months, I guess, of seeing how this plays out?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I can share, out of our 100-ish members, about 25% of them currently do green lending products. So they either have green lending products on their books or they have green lending projects in the pipeline. And I can share one of our members is called True Fund. They're located in New York City, and they received a $10 million allocation from the New York Green Bank to be able to do decarbonization retrofits in New York City. And so they have several projects in the pipeline that they're in the process of implementing. And I love that because this is before the GGRF funding that they're doing this work. And they serve as a model for our other CDFI CEOs to kind of follow suit and see, okay, how can we leverage all of the resources that are out there, green banks, private finance, public finance, foundation funding. There are members that have not responded to our surveys on green engagement, and those are the ones I'm knocking down their doors and giving them phone calls like, hey, we need to talk. I need to understand what do you guys need to know and how I can help you understand, your questions. Because I will never forget being in a Zoom meeting and someone being like, okay, MTCO2, we need to run that back. What does MTCO2 mean? And it's like metric tons of carbon dioxide. It's like the simple things that they need to, understand to be able to wrap their head around this moment.
It's complicated, right? You're like, even right now when you said, I'm like, what you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
The MTCO2?
And then like, of course, I've heard that before.
Yes. I put it in the abbreviated terms, but yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say people are enjoying this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I want to know more. I want to talk to Nia. I want to learn more about your organization. How would you say people should engage with you if you find that there's interest?
Yeah, so not only the Alliance you should reach out to, but also the Justice Climate Fund, which was awarded $940 million from the Clean Community Investment Accelerator. They are launching like rapidly. They really want to get to know folks that want to partner with them and work with them. So please go to their website, sign up for their newsletters, get acquaintance with their staff. They hired an amazing CEO. His name is Amir Kirkwood. He's a former member of our Alliance as well. And so it's really critical that the connection between the Alliance and the Justice Climate Fund is distinct, but also you understand that we work alongside each other, right, in partnership, along with a myriad of other organizations that represent the Community Builders of Color Coalition. That incorporates the Opportunity Finance Network, another awardee of GGRF, Inclusive, another awardee of GGRF, ABE, which is the American Association of Blacks in Energy. So if you want to find the Alliance, we are associated with about 17 other organizations that you may already have connections with. The National Urban League is another example, the National Bankers Association. So there's a lot of ways to get to know us.
That's
and
great.
I will have to say his name. His name is Linwood V. Long Sr. If you want to get to know the Alliance, get to know that man. He is our fearless leader, and we're so grateful to have his leadership and to be under his tutelage.
That's awesome. So stepping back from sort of the substance of community financial investment and even climate or clean energy, I have to assume that as an alliance of African American CEOs, the role of this organization is also about sort of promoting leadership and entrepreneurship of people of color in the BIPOC community. And I take it that you're sort of involved in that as well. So I'd just love to hear your own experience with that, how you've seen that play out within the Alliance and other places that you've worked, how you see it playing out in the clean energy space, sort of what you think we need to be promoting to encourage more BIPOC leadership and entrepreneurship.
This is a heavy question.
I know. We're gonna cover it in 3 minutes. That's it. That's all we need.
You know,
right?
I want to share a personal anecdote.
Great.
My dad is a small business owner in Washington, D.C. He's a musician. And I thought that I never knew what a CDFI was until I started this role. But my dad has been banking with a CDFI my entire life.
Wow,
and I think it's really critical that folks understand that CDFIs are created to have space and hold space for folks that are being rejected by the other big banks. I won't name any names, but I think it's critical that CDFIs have a space in communities' mind where they know that this is a trusted place I can go to. When I speak to our members, they say that the members of the community really trust them and trust them with their funding, trust them with their outcomes. And we hope that our members can facilitate entrepreneurial workshops where they help edify their new entrepreneurs, but also leverage entrepreneurs that they also support financially to be able to give that coaching and to give insights to ones that are coming up and wanting to, be successful, because it is hard out here. Business, it takes a lot, and not all folks come from a business background. They may come from a technical background and want to start their own business, or they may not even have formal education and still want to start their business. And so just kind of meeting everyone where they are is, I guess, my answer to that question.
Awesome. That's really cool.
Is this your first time at RE Plus?
This is my first time, and y'all, this is...
What do you think?
What do I think? This is very intense. I'm a woman of color, and I'm saddened to see that there's a lack of representation of folks that look like me in this space. I do think that there is a high barrier to entry to be able to even get into this space. I actually got sponsored by the other co-sponsor of this amazing event, SEIA, to attend. And if it weren't for SEIA, I would not be able to attend. And so I think that there could be opportunities for more targeted outreach to Black and BIPOC community affinity groups, such as the American Association of Blacks in Energy, the National Society of Black Engineers, the National Hispanic Association of Black Engineers. I don't know if that's what it's called. Please don't butcher me. But I mean, there's an affinity group for every single, BIPOC community. And I think that they deserve to be in the space. And if they're not able to afford it, then that should not even be a barrier for them to get in. If they want to come, they should be able to come and take space. And I also would love to see the youth component as well. I know that there's like an F-150 racing hydro car thing that I would love to see with the kids. But if I go in there and I see no kids of color, I'm also going to be like, well, what's going on? How do we increase the pipeline? Starting them out really young. And my first time in this convention center was a 19-year-old engineering freshman at the National Society of Black Engineers conference in 2015. And I remember being amongst all those folks being like, this is the best thing I've ever been to. And now that I'm in this environment where I'm, a speck in a crowd of white clouds, it's a lot different, but I feel motivated more than ever to make sure that we keep creating space, keep knocking down these doors. My coworkers will tell you, I will walk up to a place and they tell me, oh, you can't get in? I can't get in? And I can find my way in.
It's like a challenge.
Look, I love a challenge. So what I think about the conference in general, I think it's a great space, great convening. I haven't exactly explored the expo center yet. It's a little overwhelming for me. But some of the sessions have been amazing, all about clean energy, deployment for BIPOC communities, equity and grid deployment. So there's been a lot of amazing things, lots of good connections to be made.
I'm glad to hear it. We're glad that you're here. We're glad that you're pushing on that issue and making sure that this is as inclusive of an event as possible, because that's the goal. So
yeah,
absolutely.
you're definitely spot on though. You're right. It's a huge problem and one that we take very seriously. We're partnering with Erica Simmons on our team to make sure that all of our workforce programs, all of our diversity, equity, inclusion, the way we're thinking about this type of event, that we're doing it in the right way. And as the National Trade Association that represents the whole industry, we want to make sure that all the programming that we're putting out there is accessible and equitable, so that everyone has the same opportunity to build that generational wealth over time. So I'm so glad that you cornered me at the reception the other day, because you really are an impressive woman, and I'm so glad that you took time to come back and talk to us. I think it's just the beginning of a longer partnership. To your point, we can make sure that access is easier in the future, and we can just continue the conversation.
Yeah,
absolutely. And thank you again, Stephanie, for penciling me into the podcast too. That was another cornering. But persistence is perseverance. That's one of the things that I've learned in this life.
I like it about you already.
Thank you.
Well, Nia, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and we're looking forward to more conversations soon.
Yeah, thanks again for having me.
Yeah, so in 2022, we announced and debuted a nailable solar shingle to the world. It's called the Timberline Solar Energy Shingle, and it installs just like a regular roofing shingle. It's flexible, relatively lightweight. It's 10 pounds. I could carry it, and shows like this are one of the main vehicles that we've had for connecting directly with potential customers. We're a little bit more focused within the marketplace on the roofing side, but the solar energy industry and these types of gatherings are things that are absolutely critical. And it's a physical product, and there's something about seeing it, holding it, getting up close and personal with it that is so critical. We've even had people dance on our shingles at different trade shows.
That sounds fun.
That's fun.
It's really fun.
And no damage from the dancing.
No damage.
Nice.
They're walkable. Like, you can walk on it on the roof, so we're like, go right ahead. Walk on it here. Yeah.
Well, so all right. So we've been talking about the technology a little bit in your company's story, but I think the entry point that I've had from you is also on the policy side, right? So the public policy side of your title, and one of the things that you've been really passionate about within SEIA is establishing more community and discussion around residential solar issues, which is obviously where your company is sort of situated. So talk about that a little bit. How are you seeing the evolution of the policy conversation around residential solar? What are your kind of hopes and dreams for SEIA as we're continuing to work in that space?
I've been in residential solar for about 16 years now.
Yeah.
I'm a true resi distributed generation believer. And I think that there's something really powerful about consumer choice. It's the backbone of the American economy and in many ways the world economy. And so being able to demonstrate that it is something that people want to the degree to which they will write a check or, sign up for a loan to put it on their roof is an unbelievably powerful message. And so, there are unique challenges that come with that too. it's a different model. It's a new way of approaching generation and ownership of generation. It's a new way of thinking about the grid. It's a new way of thinking about load management and, what kind of energy is showing up at what times of day. But I think that those are really interesting innovation challenges. And I think for resilience purposes and for the, aim of kind of all of the above in addressing climate solutions and moving forward with new energy infrastructure, using sites that are closer to where the energy is being consumed is absolutely critical.
Yeah, and I just think we've seen a very different sort of energy, for pun intended, around the conversation about distributed solar as its own climate solution, right? Like, obviously, clean energy and solar in particular is a climate solution, but sort of having a new conversation about distributed energy and localized energy as a specific tool, like you said, to sort of bring just generation closer where it's in demand, is its own sort of solution to this problem that we're all facing. And I think I think that message can really resonate, and I think we're starting to see a lot more of that happen. So it's exciting.
Yeah. I love it. And having the world's biggest roofing company, this industrial giant,
right,
come in and say this is space that should be used for clean power. It's really very heartening and really exciting.
Yeah, it's
Can we pivot away from policy for a second?
Oh,
I'm sorry, guys. I got to keep my eyes open.
Oh,
It's been a
wow.
long few days. Sorry. Just kidding.
We're putting Steph to sleep.
Yeah. In all seriousness, I want to talk a little bit about women in leadership for a second, because you are the new vice chair of our board. Right, you you have a strong voice in our, around our board table. If myself personally, somebody relatively new to the solar industry, we've seen the makeup of the industry from a demographic perspective change pretty quickly over the past 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. I'd love you to just share your thoughts on that process and kind of what you're thinking about, how that has evolved and what we need to do as a collective to keep driving those numbers up.
I love this question. My first residential solar installer, the staff makeup was 100 men and 4 women. And we, on the marketing and comms team, helped to launch Sunrun in Massachusetts way back in the day. And I remember getting on calls with the Sunrun team, Ms. Lynn Jurich and then a woman named Leslie Beatty, who were leading the charge. And I remember being so struck by their strength and by the fact that there were these strong women who were in the driver's seat around what was happening in market expansion. And I ended up going to work for Sunrun in part because of the representation there and because Lynn was with Ed Fenster was one of the founders. And it was really interesting to see that there was more gender equality as far as the representation in like across all of the different strata of the organization there. And for me, it's just like you have to see the people in seat doing the things in order for there to be change.
Right.
You can talk a lot about it, but if you don't have the person who looks like a particular demographic, a particular human saying the words, making the decisions, it's going to be really hard to actually shift who is doing what in the industry. And so, I think at SEIA, under Abby's leadership, there has been at the board meeting yesterday, somebody commented, the kind of executive committee sits near Abby, and there were a line of 5 women to her right, and someone was like, look at all the ladies, here we are.
We're here.
We're here. And it's really incredible to see, and it has shifted, and it is changing. And some people shy away from the conversation, but it is so important if we are going to be the dominant form of energy in this country and in the world, that the people doing that work and making that happen actually look like the population.
I want to talk a little bit, just quickly before we let you go, your impressions of RE Plus this year. Is this your first time, or how many
No,
times?
this is my second RE Plus, so it's really exciting. I think year over year, from my understand, it just gets bigger and better and more innovative. And what's really exciting for me is to see the ecosystem continue to mature and evolve, where we're seeing more and more site operations and maintenance capabilities. Things along automation. How things can get done faster and easier, and just the incredible, I would say, synergy that we're seeing from a market environment standpoint is really exciting. So, we're really excited about some of the product lines that we've been able to announce and talk to our customers around here. Really great feedback that we've been getting, and it's exciting to see the industry mature along those lines as well.
That's great. Would you do us a favor and think about what you would want potential companies who maybe don't yet have the kind of presence that a big company like Array has at a big trade show like RE Plus? How should they be thinking about it? Any guidance you might give to prospective exhibitors?
I would say the experience is invaluable from an overall networking perspective. All the key players are here to spend time with and meet, whether it's developers, whether it's EPCs, whether it's other industry participants, where there could be collaboration opportunities. And there is no shortage at all around the opportunities to spend time with others who can help business operators and owners increase their business and collaboration across the board. So I would highly recommend anyone who's part of solar certainly to be here, to spend time here and plan for it, because the opportunities are endless to continue to get things done, have solid discussions and productive meetings, and ultimately help build their business together.
Yeah, I appreciate you use the word partner too, because I feel like the way you've described your relationship with your customers is that it's very sort of two-way street, and learning from them and figuring out what their problems and challenges are. And I love that sort of dynamic of, you're not coming here to sell to people, you're coming here to build partnerships with potential customers and learn from the customers that you already have to make sure that you're innovating and delivering the solutions that they need. So
listening is one of the most important things we do with our customers. And their feedback about the real-time challenges they're facing really matters for us to understand and be in tune with, because we can then adapt our capabilities or offerings or how we support them to best meet their clients' needs overall, because it's around the most productive project deployment that can be done on time and on budget, and we all play a role there in making that happen effectively.
So I have been an active SEIA member. I was on the board in the past. I'm not on the board right now, maybe one day. And obviously, I think SEIA has played a really important role in the federal level for absolutely, right? I mean, everything that was done in passing the IRA, in working with DOE, I think some of the work at FERC, has been, incredibly valuable, and kudos to SEIA for everything there. On the state level, I think SEIA plays an important role too in the different regional organizations. My team has focused a lot with the storage committee, and so I think that's been great. Joan and I were on a podcast together the other day, and she's like a super resource, and I think really valuable, particularly for smaller, I have a smaller team now than I had in the past. And so being able to have a committee that you can join a call and get updates of what's going on. We are really hoping that in the year to come, there are going to be more storage incentives, more VPP legislation, that having that central resource, I think, could be very valuable and worthwhile. And there are ways that smaller companies can participate in SEIA at a lower dollar level, which is really important. And so that has been super valuable. And the other valuable resource for me has been your tax people.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I really appreciate the responsiveness, again, as a company that, is not quite at the level maybe as some other companies, but we have needs.
Yeah.
And particularly as we're trying to make our way through understanding domestic content, the production tax credit, some of the different guidance that's coming out, that is also really valuable. So, kudos to the staff. I appreciate the responsiveness, and obviously this this trade meeting, and the conference is something that SEIA has been, really the driver of, right? So many of the participants are SEIA members, and I know that, and I think, this has been a great opportunity for Generac certainly to come and show our new products, and to, I always love participating, in the sessions here. So yes, lots of value from SEIA, and I really appreciate it.
That's great.
That's cool. Maybe more than any other market segment, we see that hockey stick forecast for the storage industry. So it's going to be super exciting to see how that evolves over the next 5 to 10 RE Plus.
Yeah, as you noted, it's completely different now than it was just a few years ago. And so, you mentioned that there's just such a sea change in the technologies that are on the show floor. Where do you think, let's say we're back here in 5 years at RE Plus, what do you think that's going to look like? Any visions for the challenges or the opportunities that are coming forward?
Well, I think that, hey, you're going to run out of places that you can operate. They can have this show.
I know.
I really like Anaheim versus, I'll just give you that vote. I find it more manageable here than maybe last year. But I think you're growing that way. We know that there's going to be, I think controls are like sort of this next level, right? Some of the work that we're doing, whether it's the controls inside the home, like we're doing with our thermostat, or the microgrid controller that I mentioned about, because really what we're talking about is you've got all of these distributed resources, out there in the system. We are going to, we're increasingly hearing utilities say, oh no, how are we going to know what's happening on the grid? I think that's a really interesting area. I was just speaking with a former colleague, before I came on here, who works on, issues at the edge of the grid and the data access, privacy issues, all of those issues that come to play when you have a lot of distributed resources.
Right.
The great thing about distributed resources is they really do improve resiliency, because you don't have these single points of failure, right? The challenging thing about them is we could start to have, I used to call it a million points of light or whatever. But, we're gonna have millions of points of energy.
Yeah.
And there is an issue, I think, a legitimate issue of how does that interact with the grid? What is the role with the utilities? I would have liked to have seen more utilities here. I know that there were some around and different players here. I think it's something that with SEIA and SEPA both being co-owners, I guess, of RE Plus, of this conference, is to really think about how do we move to that level of, we've had a history. I've been part of that history, where there's been a lot of tension at times with the utilities. But now that we're actually a very, very important player, we are not a niche player in the energy system. And I think you say 5 years from now, we are definitely, distributed resources are going to be the critical source of power and activity on the grid. So how could we bring more of that into this? And then the other area that I would love to see more of are more public officials here.
Yeah.
Right.
Where are the regulators? They should want to be here to learn about this technology, right? And to interact with us and to see all the great things that are happening. And, we certainly had some. I know David Crane, Deputy Secretary was here. And I'm sure that you've invited a lot of them. But I think we really need to say it's time to come here and see what's happening. You're not going to see it all at NARUC. You could see a lot of things here. And we could craft programs around it to meet their needs as well.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's great feedback.
Yeah.
I think we're thinking along those same lines.
Yeah. And it's just so great to see it up close and personal. And it's such a physical product, all these different tools and services that you can really understand a little bit better when you really see it on the show floor. So
I think so.
Well, that's good. I think we've got our work cut out for us to keep the tent growing and make sure we have everybody at the table. So.
Yeah,
Well, Ann, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you've got to jet to an airport.
Yes,
so,
I'm going to go home, and thank you, SEIA, for having me and for doing another great show.
Yeah.
You know, it's been a fun week, so
Sounds
appreciate
good.
it.
We'll
Thank
be
you
back
so much.
again next year.
All
Yeah.
right. Yep.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Ann.
Bye.
So this was fun.
This was so fun. I had a blast. And I had more fun than I expected to, sitting here completely exposed in this little fishbowl. I thought I was going to feel very awkward about it, but it's been really great. I mean, I think, people have, not to be an annoying pun maker, but I think people have had really good energy here.
Yeah.
They're bringing their best selves, and people are excited to talk about not just their product and their technology and their company and what they're focused on, but also the broader industry. It's like, you start with what that person is thinking about this week and trying to communicate to their customers, but then it quickly goes into a much more sort of community focused, like industry focused conversation about what we're all facing and the challenges that we're dealing with. So it's been really cool seeing all of that, like all the different perspectives and the ways that people come to this space.
Right. And I feel like we've been hearing the same thing across the board from everybody that we talk to about the momentum in the industry,
Yeah.
the sheer volume of growth
Yeah.
across all market segments in solar and solar storage right now. It's just amazing to see people walk in the front door and geared up to do business. Booked back to back to
Oh my
back
gosh.
all day long,
Yeah.
making deals is so fun to watch. I mean, we think about policy all day long. We think about storytelling. We think about what the big roadblocks are in the field. But the truth is in the numbers, and the numbers show progress, and
Yeah.
that's really exciting.
Yeah, and I feel like I didn't have as much time this year as I used to, because we've been in here a lot. But walking the show floor and just like the physical aspect of this is so powerful, because we sit in our office in DC all year long. We're talking about these issues and the solutions that our industry is providing, what we can do for customers, the problems that we can solve for policymakers. But when you actually walk around and you see these technologies up close, you've got demonstrations of photovoltaics on the show floor. You've got sheep out there. You've got like all these different ways that we're impacting like real people's lives, and you can actually touch it and feel it is really powerful. And I think it helps to have that moment at least once a year to just remind ourselves that we're not actually, it's not all pie in the sky. It's happening. It's really here.
Yeah, and one of the observations I made across the board too, there's so many. Obviously the impact of the Inflation Reduction Act is undeniable, right? Jobs, private sector investment, $100 billion worth of private sector investment, $26 billion in U.S. manufacturing alone since the IRA passed. That's translated into hundreds of thousands of jobs. And when you walk across the trade show floor, you see Made in America, red, white, and blue. The brand and the message is clear. And that's the same story we want to tell, right? The goal all along has been domestic manufacturing and creating jobs for American people across the country, and it's that's the real bottom line.
Yeah, and I think not to take too much credit from SEIA, but I think we're starting to get, like, I see those stories that we want to tell and those messages that we're trying to get that out there about American energy dominance and the the power of abundance and all these concepts that we sort of talk about at SEIA and we try and get out there to our members. I'm seeing it play out in real time here, and I think the more that we can do to just provide this industry with the tools to tell those stories and to be authentic about their company and about their story is just going to help bring this to so many more people. And we've talked to a lot of folks this week about bringing more people into this tent, bringing new policymakers, new audiences, new customer types, new demographics that aren't well enough represented yet. There's so many folks that we still need to have here, even though there's so many people here already. That it's great to see that people are interested in that. They want more people here. They want a bigger tent. So that's really cool too.
Right, and they will have that opportunity in Las Vegas next year.
Yeah.
The show floor is only going to continue to get bigger. We're over 40,000 this year.
Yep.
And our target is growing. We are the largest energy trade show in North America now, which is exciting. And my goal is to be number one. I want to get all the way up to number one.
Yep.
So yeah, there's our real problem now is where we're going to host this show in the future.
Exactly.
We've got to go back to Vegas, and we will do.
Yeah.
But that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it is. And you know, I think no one is you know, everyone is eyes wide open about the challenges we're facing and willing to tackle them. And I think we're going to keep coming back here at least once a year to, you know, to have these convenings and have these hard conversations about how we're scaling and how we need to focus on the right things and work through these challenges together. But not a single person I've talked to here is pessimistic about the future.
Right.
There's so much excitement and optimism for what we can do. And it's just, it's amazing. I would not have envisioned the scale and the breadth of this event now 5 years ago, and thinking about that, just like, I can't imagine what it's going to be by the end of this decade.
Right.
It's going to be a completely different story, and I can't wait to be along for the ride.
Yeah, I think one other key takeaway here is we've seen all this progress on the business development side, right? The companies that are represented here are growing fast. We need to make sure that from a policy perspective, a regulatory perspective, and from a DEIJ perspective, that we're making sure that growth is equitable across the board. So being very intentional, I think we already are very intentional about that, but doing even more work to make sure that access to capital, the conversations around business opportunities, what the program looks like, what the leadership representation looks like, how we drive a conversation for the younger generation here at RE Plus, so that the youngest folks who are in college, who are even in high school, are getting excited about what their future career can look like in the clean energy space.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to be engineers. Maybe they want to build solar panels. Maybe they want to work in the policy space. There's just so many opportunities, and this is the place to come and learn about that.
It really is. Yeah. Yeah. There's so many ways to enter here and start your journey or continue it. So thank you all for sticking with us and listening to all these amazing conversations. Steph and I have had a great time. I hope you have as well. But we look forward to more in the future.
Yeah, the show floor closes in an hour and 15 minutes. And this is about the time that I walked the show floor last year.
Yeah.
And the exhibitors were just throwing things at me. Like I brought a tool bag home for my husband, which made him very, very, very happy. So yeah. For anybody that listens to this in the future, in the end, that's the strategy.
Yeah,
that's the way to go.
Oh yeah, they're trying to. It's the fire sale. They're trying to get rid of everything so that they don't have to pack it back home. And we're doing the same thing behind us, I'm sure, giving away all of our ice packs and yo-yos, and it's always fun. So,
yep.
Well, till next year, I guess. I can't wait to see. I mean, we've come full circle. We had this idea at RE Plus last year. We're here doing it. It's incredible. We're excited, and who knows what we're going to be talking about next year, but I'm sure we'll be having a lot of fun.
I don't know much, but we're going to make it fun.
Yeah.